Okay, folks, I am so excited for our show, video podcast. My name is Rajiv Saja, and I'm honored to have our guest speaker today. You know, we live in an era today where there's a lot of conversations, discussions, news about immunity and health, which has been on people's minds, top of people's minds because of the pandemic we're going through in several parts of the world. What better than to have an expert join us today on our podcast to really share some facts versus all this information that's coming at you. So I'm so excited to introduce our guest today on the podcast, Dr. Shobhit Madan, who has several years of healthcare experience in preventive cardiology and public health from the University of Pittsburgh. Since 2004, Dr. Madan has authored 50 plus research papers, book chapters on cardiology, and has 500 plus citations in his name. And Dr. Madan has saved lives from cardiovascular diseases, metabolic syndrome, cancer, stroke, and dementia. What is unique about Dr. Shobhit, along with his medical background, he brings a passion to help people and serve others with wellness and awareness applicable to preventive holistic health education. So I'm excited to have Dr. Shobhit here and on the show today. Welcome, Dr. Shobhit.
Hi, Rajiv. Glad to be
Yeah,
here.
welcome. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I just came back from my 30-minute walk.
There you go. That's part of a lot of things that we're going to talk about. And I know you and your wife Neetu, who's also in preventive health, are expecting your first child. So early
Yes,
congratulations to
yes.
you. Dr. Shobhit, there's a lot of discussion around, the whole world has gone through a lot of health challenges, concerns through this pandemic. So we want to kind of get into a couple of topics that will help our audience, because our purpose with this video podcast and this series, and I'm sure you will not be a stranger to our show, I'm sure you'll come back again on many different topics, is really to help people that are part of our community to live the life they richly deserve.
Right.
And part of that is awareness, building awareness about what is good, what is not good with your health. So the first question, really, I want to ask you as a medical expert and someone that's has a really unique blend between wellness, preventive health, and the field of medicine, is the immune system. And what goes into creating a bulletproof immune system, because we hear all this, how do I build my immunity? So we really want to pick your brain on how does one go about creating a bulletproof immune system. What are your thoughts on that, Dr. Shobhit?
Sure, Rajiv. That's a great question. And, as Rajiv, you shared about my background over the last 2 decades, I have experienced in my career that almost 70% of mortality happening today and morbidity is preventable. And it's just basically the lack of awareness. And also, but a lot of people who actually get aware, there's a lot of noise. There's so much information. And how to separate the signal from the noise, it comes down to two things. One is the uh, authenticity of the resources that we are actually using today, and what benefits can we get potentially from application of those resources in our life, which should be convenient. It should not be out of our you know uh, comfort zone as much as, but all of the things we already know that we have to stretch ourselves a little bit outside the comfort zone to understand. So just like many other systems in the body, like the GI system, circulatory system, immune system is a very important part of our body. And it's not that immune system has suddenly become very important. It's always been important. The issue is that its relevance only comes down to when you actually need it to work
Yeah.
for you. And a lot of people's immune system actually is not operating at the optimal level. It's
Hmm.
operating at a suboptimal level. And the primary reason is the lack of enough nutrients in the body, which can nourish those cells to work at their optimal capacity, right? So, so the immune system, I'll just touch a little bit about today in the next couple of minutes about what is immune system and how we can actually have it work at the optimal level and bulletproof our immune system and prepare it to combat infections. Okay, so the immune system is basically a network of biological processes that protects an organism from diseases. It detects and responds to a wide variety of pathogens from viruses, bacteria, parasitic infections, as well as cancer cells, and also sometimes some own cells, because you must have heard of some autoimmune diseases.
Hmm.
So, so many, there are three types of actually immune types. One is the innate immunity, which is also called as natural or non-specific immunity. And the other is basically the acquired, specific, or adaptive immunity, right? And then, of course, there is the active and passive immunity. So there are certain cells specific to each type of immunity. And one of the cells is called lymphocytes, also called as the white blood cells. And the in the number range, they usually are between 4 and 11. A lot of people have it under 4, like 3.53 or 3.8. They don't know. And many times the white cells are not able to respond as quickly as they should. So how can we prepare those cells to work for us? And that's where we need to understand a little bit more about nutrition and the science behind the nutrition to help us, use our innate immunity to work for us and also the adaptive immunity. So I hope that just
Yeah, that made a lot of sense.
makes sense.
Not until recently, Dr. Shobit, most people don't know all of the metrics in their blood, right?
Right.
Blood work. When you get your blood work done, it is a state of where your body is, and it is an early, well, not even an early, it's an indication of what's to come,
Mhm.
whether it's wellness or illness. And as part of our podcast series, we have a deep passion to educate our community about how to take care of themselves. So, what I'm finding, a lot of people today, they're so focused on making money in their early ages, 20s, 30s, and
Right.
40s. And when they get older, 50s, 60s, and 70s, they give all that money back towards taking care of their health because they didn't pay
Sure.
attention early on to the
Mhm.
things that matter. So I'm so glad you shared your perspective on how to build a bulletproof immune system.
Yes.
So a big part of immunity is also your a well balanced diet.
Sure.
So let's kind of move to how do we, if I am listening to this show and I feel I grew up, and I'm sure you too, Dr. Shobit, when we were growing up, we ate whatever our moms cooked
Mhm.
and things that were tasting good. That's been part of, and we all have our favorite foods, which may not be the
Right.
nutritious foods. So how do we balance and how do we pick? What are components in your mind that go into a well balanced, nutritious diet?
Right. So that's a great question, Rajiv. Now, when we talk about the awareness, there's a lot of things that we know as because what we see, and there is a hidden aspect of nutrition. So, of course, no parent would want to feed their child, which can hurt them, but they are also not aware by themselves. So it's also just having a understanding the empathy towards your own body, because that's the only permanent place we live. That's permanent address where we live. So you have to make sure that we take care of our body. So understanding nutrition, because our body is made of cells, tissues, organs, and these are all organic. They're made of minerals like calcium, magnesium. We need these chemicals like sodium and potassium, which are naturally occurring in the body. Now, um, what is happening is the lack of understanding between the food that we actually eat at home, how it is cooked, in the first place, the food safety and the food hygiene. These are very important aspects in nutrition. And the other aspect is what we get it from outside. It may be healthy. Not everything which we get from outside is unhealthy, but also knowing what are the components of that food that you're getting, what are choices we can have. Like for the longest time, when I did not know much about food science, because that is never taught in medical school, I learned it by choice when I was doing my master's in public health. And later on, when I started learning more about wellness, I found out that the food is actually, broken down into macronutrients, micronutrients, and phytonutrients. And when you intentionally want to understand that how my body will react, my immune system will react to that body, to the food I'm going to consume, is something miraculous, because then you start seeing the differences. So two things which are, which can hurt the body in abnormal quantities. One is salt and one is sugar.
Mm.
And also, so on the kind of oil we use. So these kind of, knowing, getting aware. I mean, there's so much information online where people can go and understand how much salt we should consume, how much sugar we should consume, and then what we should not consume, because there's a lot of added sugar in a lot of the food ingredients that we are eating today, and they start a process called as inflammation. And inflammation is the fundamental reason for our body's immune defense, circulatory defense, and the nervous system to operate at suboptimal levels. If we can, cut inflammation, we can actually start really helping our cells perform at an optimal level. So macronutrients, of course, we'll go into further details at a following webinar, but today I'll just touch upon that a little bit. How macronutrients can benefit, which includes protein, carbs, and fats, and they're further broken onto essential fats and non-essential fats. There has to be an optimal ratio between the omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. All of this is very critical to have the immune system work at an optimal level. That's very important. Second thing is food safety. When we bring food from grocery stores, how do we clean it? How do we know, what is on the surface of an apple? Because right now they just put a lot of chemicals on these fruits just for preserving them to travel from where they are produced to. So food hygiene and food safety is very critical aspect. So just wanted to briefly touch upon that. And the other aspect beside macronutrients is our supplementation, which is absolutely essential to help our immune cells. And, and also the source of those supplements, that's very critical.
Yeah.
And not to forget the fiber to improve our, gut system, and probiotics. And we'll go into further details at our next session, but I just wanted to briefly touch upon these areas of the diet in enhancing our immune system.
Yeah, there's a lot of conversation about supplementation, and also what does, there are different brands. Our show is not about specifically recommending that online. The person that is invited you to the show can possibly potentially provide more details about those supplementation. But we talk about going behind the label, right? We can do a whole show on reading labels, which I think is a great topic. And I think we ought to do that at some point, because we tend to just look at the key things. I was very ignorant about what I was purchasing. I was purchasing based on taste and not necessarily on nutrition and health value. So I'm sure we can get into that a little bit at a later time. But that was great insight about really taking inventory of what you're consuming on a daily basis.
Right.
And really adjusting that to move towards wellness and not really illness.
Right.
So the next thing, as we wind down, we can keep talking, Dr. Shobhit. I mean, the health is such a big topic.
It is
on so many people's minds, and that's why we have formed what we formed in our platform to share this intel with a lot of people. So the next thing is, there's a lot of people that are hearing, families near and dear that are
Yes.
Suffering from this pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
How does one build emotional resilience
Mm-hmm.
during this time? I'm a firm believer in, being optimistic, giving hope to people, doing what you can control during this pandemic,
Right.
and taking care of yourself and the people around you. What is your perspective on building emotional resilience during this time?
Absolutely, that's a fantastic question, and I think that it ties into our immune defense also, because our emotions actually control our thoughts, and thoughts control our actions, and that controls our habits, and that forms our overall personality. So I think emotional resilience comes down to how quickly we can come back from an emotional adversity. So first of all, there is a lot of input we can control. We have to filter in what we are putting in our mind, and that will actually control our output also. And I think this whole thing comes down to understanding, just like we understand the food ingredients, what we consume, we also have to understand what ingredients we put in our mind, and how the neurochemical mechanism inside our brain work in our favor instead of working against us. I posted an article on LinkedIn recently on the balance of four hormones which can actually affect our outcome. And one is serotonin, the other is dopamine, the third is epinephrine, or also called the flight or fight hormone, and the fourth is oxytocin. And each of these hormones, we don't need to know all the science behind these hormones, but we just need to know the basic fundamentals, how we can have these hormones work for us. They are the happy hormones and they are the sad hormones. So how to make the happy hormones more in our body, which are already there, just like after eating dark chocolate or after drinking coffee, we feel like good, we had a good feeling. But when we are actually so like, let us say we are scared of something, some people are just scared of a snake or being in a dark area, and you think that, oh, there's something moving and something is there. So we do have that fear, you know, so that induces a different set of hormones. So understanding how these hormones function, I will discuss this in detail at a separate topic in a separate webinar. But the main thing is to understand that how to filter in, and filter out that information. Like, there's so much of news in the media. We do need to know what's happening in the world, but we do not need to go into all the specifics, which create that anxiety response in our body,
Well said.
and that affects rather even our diet.
Yeah.
So I mean, haven't you noticed sometimes that just like after hearing something sad news and a lot of things, you don't even feel like eating?
Yeah, you're right. No, I think you hit it right on the head. The concept of your hormones in your body and knowing what triggers the good ones and knowing what triggers the bad ones is a great beginning. You mentioned chocolate as an example. If I love chocolate, my wife Minnie loves chocolate. Our only problem is only have to eat a little bit of chocolate. You can't keep
Yes.
loading up on chocolate. So it's
Right.
portion control is also a good one. But that's great. The four hormones is a great suggestion for the show, and we can get into some of these topics in a future podcast series in depth. But we can continue talk conversation, Dr. Shobit. I think your background is fascinating because you live at the crossroads, in my mind, because most medical doctors are curing illnesses,
Right.
which is what they're trained for. And we're grateful for medical doctors ever, and even during this time more so. But they're really not giving you care for wellness, so you never have to go encounter illness.
True.
And you live at that crossroads because you have a passion for wellness, you have a master's in public health. So this has been a great 10 minutes of the show. We're really excited that you took some time away from your family to join us, and hopefully you will not be a stranger to the show. We'll get you back again, and thank you for joining us, Dr. Shobit.
Thank you, Rajiv, and I wish everybody be a healthy and a safe day.
Thank you.